everybody, it's Emily back again for another Broadway musical. So I got a lot of good feedback that I really appreciated from everybody, so thank you so much for those of you who reached out and told me how much you liked my last class. I hope that I will again do you proud. So let's get started. The musical that I have chosen for today is a musical called Pippin. It's one of my favorites. It's actually one that I've probably seen the most out of all the shows that I've seen. I just love it. It's such a fun musical, and I'm really excited to share it with y'all today. All right, so Pippin, the original musical, its music and lyrics are written by Stephen Schwartz. You may recognize him. He wrote the musical Wicked, as well as the musical Godspell, and he's also worked on a couple different films writing lyrics, a couple different Disney films, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Enchanted, a lot of things. The book was written by Roger O. Herson, so again, that's the dialogue in the musical. The story is based on the historic figures, King Charlemagne and his son Pippin, although there isn't any historical accuracy in the story at all. It's really just those two characters, their names, and that's pretty much about it. So the original production premiered in 1972 at the Imperial Theater in New York. It starred John Rubinstein as the role of Pippin, and Ben Vereen, who's big name, and he is starred as the leading player. I just realized that my photo cut off my next blurb there, but it was directed and choreographed by the legendary Bob Fosse, so that tells you how big this show was when it came out, to have such a big name behind it. It ran for 1,944 performances on Broadway, making it the 36th longest running Broadway show. So although it's not necessarily one of the more well-known ones, it is one of the more successful ones, I'd say. What's interesting about it is it has a pop kind of rock score to it, a couple different ballads, and a lot of big fun numbers. So it's really a unique musical. The original production, which again was directed and choreographed by Bob Fosse, was described as something surreal and disturbing by one of his critics, and that's actually, although it doesn't necessarily seem good, that was actually a compliment to the work, because as you'll see as I get into the story, Pippin is this very mystical, magical tale. So that's really a badge of honor for it to be described that way. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Pippin was revived in 2013 at the Music Box Theater by the American Repertory Theater, and that's the company that produced and performed the musical Pippin. It starred Matthew James Thomas in the role of Pippin and Patina Miller as the role of the leading player, which was a really big role for her to fill, taking over for someone as prestigious as Ben Vereen, but she really did such a phenomenal job in the role, and she got quite a lot of praise for it. So what was interesting about the revival is that it introduced circus choreography, circus acts, and acrobatics, and it really just changed the scale of the show. Whereas before, the original production was more simplistic. It had the role of characters and like very interesting costumes, but they really just made it just such a bigger production in the revival. And again, a change that they made to it was they added an extension to the ending, which we'll get into later. But what I wanted to show you first for clips, I'm going to show you kind of a comparison between the original production and the revival. So what we're going to see is one of the opening numbers. It's a song called Magic to Do. Again, Ben Vereen is playing the leading player, which we'll go into what that means in a little bit. But I'm just going to show you a little snippet from the original production of this number, and then I'm going to show you what the revival looked like. So let me get that started.
So join us, sit where everybody can see. We've got magic to do, just for you. We've got miracle place to play. We've got hearts to perform, hearts to warm, kings and queens to take by storm as we go along our way.
All right, so again, you see, it's not your typical musical. It's a little bit eccentric, a little bit odd, you might say. Leaves a little bit up to the imagination as to what the bigger picture of this world is. But do not hesitate to think that this next one is going to be anything like that. It is similar in tone, I would say, but here we have a much bigger picture painted. So again, this is the revival production, and this is the one that they performed at the Tonys in 2013. So here we go.
Join us, leave your fields with flower. Join us, leave your cheeks to sour. Join us, come and waste an apple or two. Diddly-doo, intrigue, plots to bring disaster, humor, and the fire faster. Romance, sex presented pastorally. Diddly-dee, fantasy, naughty.
Battles, barbarous and bloody.
Join us, sit where everybody can see. We've got magic to do, just for you. We've got miracle place to play. We've got hearts to perform, hearts to warm, kings and kings to take by storm as we go along our way. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to the show!
Are you having a good time tonight?
Okay. All right. So, you got to see a little bit of both shows, but we still don't really know that much about it. So let's get into the plot here. So what you just saw was the leading player and the troupe, but so far we haven't been introduced to our title role, which is Pippin. Oh, hold on. Oh, okay, here we go, sorry. keep going. Okay, so we have the leading player and the troupe, which is the number that you just saw. And they introduce us to the character of Pippin. Now, Pippin is the son of King Charles, or Charlemagne, but he's referred to as simply Charles in the musical. Pippin just finished his schooling. He's a young and educated prince, and he's looking for an extraordinary life. He's hoping to find his purpose in life, and that is where the troupe comes in. Now, the troupe is almost like a Greek chorus, if you will. They interact with the audience, they help to progress the story along, and they're really the driving force behind the story and the way that it goes. So they get involved with Pippin, they reach out to Pippin, and they offer to help him find his purpose. They offer him extraordinary things, and they take him on this journey. So at first he decides that he's going to seek some adventure. So he joins his father Charles and his brother Louis out on the battlefield as they are getting ready to engage in a war. And at first Pippin is interested in this, but he doesn't really like the tyranny of it. He doesn't like the brutality of it. So he decides that that's not really for him. So he leaves his father and his brother behind in the battlefield, and he saw a lot of bloodshed as well. And he decides to find his grandmother, she lives elsewhere. His stepmother wasn't a fan of her, so he goes to her for advice, and she has this great number that we'll see a little bit of later called "No Time at All," and she just encouraging him to enjoy life, and rather than go on this path trying to find big adventures, to just take life one moment at a time. And it's really just it's a really great heartfelt number. So he kind of takes his grandmother's advice. He goes on this crazy journey into these meaningless sexual encounters. But again, he's still unfulfilled. He realizes that meaningless sex doesn't give him the happiness that he's looking for. He's looking for love, and he's looking for adventure, and he's looking for excitement. So after he breaks free from that whole scene, he again goes to this troupe, which is helping him find his way. And the leading player suggests that he go on a quest to fight tyranny and to fight evil. And he realizes that his father has been acting as a tyrant, engaging in this battle, and so he decides that he's going to kill his father. So the Act 1 ends with him killing his father as he prays, and then Pippin is crowned king, and that is how Act 1 ends. So the next number I'm going to show you is a number called Simple Joys, and this is kind of taking place around the time that the battle scene is going on, and this is the leading player. Again, she's just so phenomenal. I just love her. So sorry. It's not supposed to happen.
You don't feel big honey ran from himself, which was mighty far to run. Out into the country where he played as a boy. He knew he had to find him some simple joy. He wanted someplace warm and green. We all could use a change of scene. Sweet summer evenings, hot wine and bread, sharing your supper, sharing your bed. Simple joys have a simple voice that says, why not? Go ahead. And wouldn't you rather be a left-handed flea, a crab on the slab at the bottom of the sea, and a man who never learns how to be free, not till the day he dies.
Very nice.
All right, so that was on the David Letterman show that they were performing that. So that number's a lot of fun. You didn't see me, but I was dancing over there. And she's just so talented. I love her. Okay, so again, Act 1 ends, and Pippin has killed Charles and become king. So we open Act 2 with Pippin. He is, again, he's now king, but he's exhausted with the demands of the kingdom. He's trying to make everybody happy. That's what he wants to do, but he finds himself turning to tyranny himself, and he realizes that, how hard it must have been for his father, and that his father maybe wasn't such a bad guy after all. So he begs the leading player to bring his father back to life, which she does because this is a play and she can do that. His life is a play to her, and she's the one orchestrating the events in his life. So after he leaves being king, his father gives him a nice scolding for killing him. He tries art and he tries religion and he tries different things, and he's still not finding his purpose. So he's kind of collapsed on the ground. He's in despair, and this widow who is a farm owner named Catherine comes along, and she is actually a member of the troupe as well as her son Theo. So they find Pippin and they bring him to their farm, where Pippin is helping out with their day-to-day chores. But he thinks that he's above it. He's an educated man. He's a prince. And he finds that these menial tasks are too ordinary for him. Again, he's searching for an extraordinary life. He's searching for purpose. So he doesn't really want to stay there on the farm. But he is finding himself warming up to Catherine. Catherine is attracted to him as well, which the leading player is not too fond of, because this is a member of her troupe, and they have a job they need to do. So Theo has a pet duck that ends up getting sick and dies, and Pippin comforts him in that moment, and although he does get closer to them, he does end up eventually leaving. He still hasn't felt that feeling of fulfillment that he's looking for. So he leaves to find his purpose, and again he runs into the troupe. The leading player decides that this is her big moment to get Pippin to have his big moment, and she convinces him that the big moment that he's been looking for in his life, the thing that will make him extraordinary, is their big finale. And there's a little bit of references throughout the musical referencing the big finale and how the troupe is anticipating this moment and how it's all leading up to this big finale. And when we get there, we realize that the grand finale that the leading player is choosing for Pippin's life is basically death. She has this big elaborate stunt plan for him with a big box filled with flames, and she wants him to become one with the fire, and that will help him, serve his purpose in life and, go out extraordinarily. As the troupe is trying to convince him, he's hesitating, he's deciding whether or not to do it, he's becoming encouraged, but a member of the troupe steps out of the crowd, and it's Catherine and Theo, and they convince Pippin not to go through with it. They tell him about how much he means to them, and he decides that they're right, and that the ordinary life is actually what will make him feel happy and fulfilled. He has a line that says, in order to be free, I have to be tied down. And it kind of shows you how much he's changed from the beginning of the story. He decides that he's going to stay with them and live a happy life with them and break free from the troupe, much to the leading player's anger. And he says, the last line is actually, Catherine asks how he feels, and he says, trapped but happy. And I just think that, it's a really big change from the beginning of the story to see Pippin grow in that way. So the next number I'm going to show you is called On the Right Track. And this is from the beginning of Act 2. It's the first number of Act 2. And this is, again, the leading player playing her role, getting Pippin to go along on this path. And this is after she's brought back Charles, and she's trying to get Pippin back on the path to find his extraordinary life. This clip that I'm going to show you is from a performance that they did on The View.
Now you may not believe this, Pippin.
Hold on one moment. There we go.
But things are going exactly according to plan. They are. You look frenzied. You look frazzled. Peaked eyes and you up. Flushed and rushed and razzle-dazzled. Dry lips. Damp scalp. If you take it easy, just a while. Don't look blue. Don't look back. You'll pull through in just a while, 'cause you're on the right track. On the right track. Take it on the right track. Son, on the take it right track. Easy, son. Take it.
mentioned before, Catherine and Pippin, they reunite, they decide they're gonna live together, their happy, ordinary life, and the leading player and the troupe, they become angered that he doesn't, go with their big grand finale. So they decide they're gonna shut the whole show down. They take the set, and they take the music, and they take the troupe, and they leave the stage, and they say, well, have fun singing with no music, you're on your own. In the original production, that was how it ended. And in the revival, they decided to add a little bit of an extra ending onto there. So the troupe gets mad, the leading player gets mad, they leave the stage, they strip the stage down, and Catherine and Pippin, they're happy in love, and they kind of meander off the stage, and we're left with Theo. Now Theo, he's kind of starts to get into a verse of the song "Corner of the Sky," which is actually Pippin's opening number. And as he starts to sing this, we see the troupe hears this, they start to re-enter with, they introduce the background music for their big number at the beginning, Magic to Do, as they approach Theo. And basically it suggests that these events that happen are going to come full circle. This whole existential crisis that Pippin goes through is going to be experienced by Theo as well. And this ending, I think, just adds a little touch of, you have like the optimism with the story of Pippin, but there's a little bit of a darkness to it as well. So Stephen Schwartz, the composer and lyricist, actually says that he prefers the extended ending. He really likes the way that they added that on there for the revival production. So the last couple clips I'm going to show you. The first one I'll show you is from the song "No Time at All," which is the song that the grandmother sings with Pippin in the first act. But this one is actually from the television show Glee. I showed a clip of it from the last video that I did. I really love Glee. It's such a good show. They incorporate so many different Broadway musical elements and pop culture elements into their show. And really tie it into their own story. So I wanted to show a little clip of what Glee did with this song. I apologize for the subtitles. This was the only clip I could find. It's a really good quality. It's just it has weird subtitles on it. But this is actually Shirley MacLaine and Darren Criss. I'm sure many of you know who Shirley MacLaine is. If you don't know who Darren Criss is, he was on the television show Glee. He's also been in American Crime Story, the television show. He performed on Broadway, and he's a phenomenal singer. So this is "No Time at All" from Pippin, performed by Glee. Or not. Okay, never mind. Hold on. Why did you do that? I apologize.
What good is a field on a fine summer night if you sit all alone with the weeds? Or a succulent pear if with each juicy bite you spit out your teeth with the seeds? Before it's too late, stop trying to wait for fortune and fate you're secure of. For there's one thing to be sure of, mate. There's nothing to be sure of. Oh, it's time to start living. Time to take a little from this world we're given. Time to take time, 'cause spring will turn to fall in just no time at all. Sages tweet that age is sweet. Good deeds and good work earn you laurels. But what can make you feel more obsolete than being noted for your morals? Give me a man who is handsome and strong, someone who's stalwart and steady. Give me a night that's romantic and long, then give me a month to get ready. Now I could waylay some aging roué and persuade him to play in some cranny, but it's hard to believe I'm being led astray by a man who calls me Granny. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's time to start
Okay. So I wanted to show you a live production of that number, because that one's really fun. And in the revival version, they actually make it a sing-along with the audience, which is really cool. And it becomes this really big number. She's dressed as a grandmother when she starts the song, with a lot of layers. And as she gets into the song, and the song picks up a little bit, she like strips off her layers. She's wearing like this fancy like leotard with like all these crystals, and she gets lifted up on this big like acrobatic swing. And it's just such a fun number, but unfortunately I wasn't really able to find anything that was of decent quality, but I still wanted to give you a little taste of the song, so that's why I decided to show this one, which is really fun. I'll save that I'll save the last clip for a little bit. I wanted to talk about the different awards and acclaims that Pippin has had, because it really has gained quite a bit of notoriety. So in the original production, they had quite a few Tony wins, including Best Lead Actor for Ben Vereen, Best Direction and Choreography, which was Bob Fosse, Best Scenic Design, and Best Lighting Design. It also earned nominations for Best Musical, Best Book of a Musical, Best Supporting Actress, Featured Actress, Original Score, and Costume Design. So it earned quite a lot of nominations, which is really great. A couple of songs were covered in the 70s by the Supremes, and the Jackson 5 did a couple covers as well. So I think that's pretty cool. And in the 1996 book by Scott Miller, it's a book called From Assassins to West Side Story, he said that Pippin is a largely underappreciated musical with a great deal more substance to it than people realize. And I truly stand by that. I always, it's a bittersweet moment when I meet somebody who hasn't heard of Pippin yet, because it's fun for me to get to introduce them to this musical. And I feel like, even though I've talked a lot about it right now, I still feel like I'm not doing it justice. The first time that I had seen Pippin, it was a college production. It was in Ithaca College. It was very well done, but it was very close to the original production, and I didn't quite understand it. I didn't know how the troupe really led the story, and I don't think it was a bad production at all. It just was really hard for me to connect to. But the revival, I think, really, I will say that for the most part, I don't like the idea of spectacle for the sake of spectacle, but I feel like the spectacle that they really made Pippin in the revival really just helped to flesh out the story more, create this bigger world, create this environment that Pippin's living in, and it just gives you a better understanding of how this troupe works, the power that this troupe has in orchestrating the moments in Pippin's life and like creating this path for him. So the revival, to me, I actually saw the national Broadway tour. I saw it twice, and it was just a phenomenal show. I really loved this revival. Again, the revival was pretty much just as successful as the original. It won Tonys for Best Revival of a Musical, Best Lead Actress, which was Patina Miller. So that was Ben Vereen's role that she revived. So that was the first time that two actors won it of different genders for the same role, which is interesting. It also won for Best Featured Actress, which was Andrea Martin. We saw a little snippet of her in one of the clips I showed. And it also won the Tony for Best Direction of a Musical. And it earned a lot of Tony nominations as well. Best Featured Actor, that was for Terrence Mann. Best Choreography, and a lot of creative nominations. Best Scenic Design, Costume, Lighting, and Sound Design. So again, pretty successful, and it's just such a beautifully well done musical. I absolutely adored the revival that I saw. ART, the American Repertory Theater, which I mentioned before, they're the company that produced and performed it. So they're the ones that took it on tour. It was on tour from 2014 to 2016. It was in the U.S. and internationally. I actually saw it where I went to college. I believe I saw it in like the Utica area, and then when I ended up going home on break, my mom had bought tickets for it, so I got to see it with her as well, which was pretty much the same actors. But what was interesting about the tour, which was really exciting, was the role of Charles, the father, was played by John Rubinstein, who played Pippin in the original musical. And I was lucky enough that I got to meet him. Both times that I saw it, I got to meet the actor that played Louis, the brother. I got to meet him both times that I saw it. And again, the revival is just, I cannot say enough good things about it. I feel like a lot of times when musicals are revived, it can really be a hit or miss. And I feel like the revival definitely does more than justice to the original score and the original script. It's just something that I absolutely adore. So the last clip that I'll show you is it's the making of the album. So you'll get to see little clips of different songs, and you'll get to see the actors in the studio as they're recording their cast album. So this will be a fun one.
Far away, you'll hear me singing softly to the dawn. Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. Got to be where my spirit can roam free. Gotta find my corner of the sky. Taken by
endeavor to explain what separates a charlatan from a Charlemagne. A rule no leginder was illustrious and various. The promises of Pompey are Darius and Darius.
And if we all could spread a little sunshine, all could lend a helping hand, 'cause I'm just a plain, everyday commonplace, come what may, average, ordinary, wonderful. Morning glow is here. We've got magic to do just for you.
Ooh, all right. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting a little emotional right now. I just love this show so much. I think it truly encompasses a lot of things I love about musical theater. You know, it's exciting, it has great music, it has the nice, like, beautiful ballads, but it also has these really big, exciting dance numbers, and it's just so big and colorful and full of life, and it just has such a good story that I think we all can learn a lot from. And I could talk about it forever, but I won't. I think I've talked about it long enough. So thank you so much for listening. Let me know if you liked it. If you have any suggestions for another musical, let me know. I've done and seen a lot of them, so even if I haven't heard of it, I will more than be happy to delve into a new one. Again, if you want me to do something that maybe you haven't heard of before, you want me to do something brand new, I'll be happy to do that as well. So just let me know what you think. I appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully I'll be doing more of these. So thank you so much for listening. Have a good night. Bye.